Good morning. You join us at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it is time for another road trip. We are heading to Kansas from West Michigan, and it is a balmy 22 degrees. The purpose of today's trip is to figure out what's up with Cybertruck's cold weather road tripping. I've been defrosting the truck for the last hour, and it's at 100%. So it's preconditioned, it's ready to go. It's even still pulling power from the charger as we're running the HVAC here. But it is 22 degrees. We're going to figure out what's going on. One way or another, we're doing it 800 miles today. Let's go. Our first stop here should be in Indiana. Hopefully we can stretch that a bit more because that's a 25% arrival. 160 miles, which is 75% of our battery. 2.5 hours. Let's go. Alrighty, let's take a look at what we did. That one was interesting. 157 miles, 105 kilowatt hours. That's almost 700 watt hours per mile. 665. That's not great. But kind of it is what it is at this point. FSD really wanted to rocket this last stretch. A lot of empty highway, a lot of straight sections where it was going 80 miles an hour. So I'm not surprised it's higher. But at the same time, that's still not good. For 80 miles an hour on this truck, I usually expect 550 or so. So that's maybe, is that what, 20% higher than what I'd expect? I'll give you a little more context too on the outside here. We are running the roof rack. This is the Mars Adventure Gear roof rack. With a couple of traction boards on top there. There usually is a spare tire. You can see the mount for that there. That is in the bed. Everything else about this truck is stock. We even have the wheel covers. If I open up the tonneau cover here, you'll see that we do have not a ton of stuff, but spare tire, a couple of duffel bags, and a cooler. Nothing else going on there. I do want to clean the windshield, but we do have some ice here, which I do wonder if that's causing any kind of issue. I might try to remove some of that while I clean the windshield. It is kind of disgusting, but we're gonna sit here and get some juice before we continue. Got some venting here. That's crazy. Check that out. Wow. It is cold, that's for sure. Check of the weather. Currently 22 degrees. We're just outside of Chicago right now. 22 degrees, a 5-mile-an-hour wind out of the northwest, which means that it is more of a side wind. It's been a tailwind up until this point. Now it'll be a side wind. Not too bad. Also gotta clean these cameras here a little bit. We are charged up 61%, a little overcharged. Our next stretch is only about 90 miles. We're gonna stop for breakfast first at a McDonald's. Let's unplug. Come on. try this again. This side is a V3. That other side is a V2. They expanded this station. I think there was eight or 12 of these V2s, and then they added another 12 V3s here. Something like that. Let's see what we arrived with. Oh, and of course, because we moved, it went away. It was about the same. You can see that our trip average so far, over 250 miles, is still 662. So about the same. We did hit some traffic. I shouldn't say traffic. We were going about 60, 65 through the Chicagoland area, and that, yeah, right through the south side of Chicago. That, we were getting like just over 500 miles, 500 watt hours per mile, and then once we hit the open road here in the plains to the west of Chicago, we actually saw that higher the higher efficiency come back, so the 660s, 650s, something along those lines. Definitely looking like 70 miles an hour or so, we're hitting 550, 80 miles an hour, we're hitting that 660. So yeah, what is that, 20% difference between 70 and 80 miles per hour. But I think we're to keep on doing whatever the computer recommends. We have been running FSD the entire time. Zero intervention so far. I had one assist early on for some snow-covered roads, and that's it. So FSD 13.2.1 is doing absolutely awesome. Already pulling 256 kilowatts at this V3. We're here for about half an hour to make it about 100 miles. I think we can do a bit less than half an hour, but let's look at the rest of our trip so far. The trip planners added a bunch of stops, probably because of the cold. I'm hoping that we don't have to stop at all of them because, you know, this one here, 2 stops within 30 miles of each other in Des Moines doesn't seem like the right move, but Grand Island will certainly be our last stop there. So sit back and relax. So our passenger door still is not working right. Tesla service has approved the fix. They just don't have the part yet, so we're road tripping without it. So right now the window does not open or close or let the door open. So I have to like squeeze it in there and then slam the door shut. Not ideal, but at least it's getting fixed. And just like that, we're ready to go. 67%, 8% arrival. Good with me. All right, we arrived with 12%. That last drive was 98 miles, about an hour and a half, 640 watt hours per mile. This one was different. I locked the speed on this last trip at 70 miles an hour for the entire time. And so that's only a couple percent of efficiency gain over our last leg, which is around that 660 mark. So, and we were at about 620 on the current drive until we hit the preconditioning for this stop. So take that with what you will. It is still a balmy 22 degrees outside, and we are at now the world's largest truck stop, if that'll go into focus. So we're gonna go check that out. We've been here a bunch of times, but they've got good food, good bathrooms, all of the above. So let's go adventure. right, we are back from truck stop. It was great. 100 miles to go next on our next leg. 17% arrival, and let's see what happens. It's anyone's guess. Thank you to the V3s for the fast charge. Let's do it. Right, we arrived with 2%. That was a close one. I was definitely throttling the speed there at the very end. That was 148 miles, 2 hours, 10 minutes, and much better efficiency this time. 559, that includes preconditioning. So that's a lot better. I was keeping the speed, 65 to 70 that time, and a lot of traffic, so we were drafting a lot off of other vehicles. This charge is going to take a little bit. It says 45 minutes. Quick check of the weather in Des Moines, Iowa. 27 degrees outside. It's warmed up a little bit. Still 5 miles an hour wind from the southeast, which is actually a tailwind now from the east. So that's good. No rain, no snow, but it did get really cloudy in the last little stretch there. No more sunshine, but that shouldn't really affect what we're doing. As long as there's no wind, I'm good. Alrighty, this was a slower charge. I think we maxed at 200 kilowatts, which was kind of bizarre. I wonder if that's because the truck didn't precondition completely on the way in here because of our lower state of charge arrival, but we are leaving with 78% for, that's to our lunch stop. I think the next stop is about 150 miles away. Should be about a 14-ish% arrival. Omaha, Nebraska. Let's unplug. The buttons on all of these chargers are getting a little weird. Starting to crack a little bit. See that? Weird. All right. Alrighty, we are in Omaha, Nebraska. Arrived with 3%, and there is another Cybertruck here. Nice. Arrived at 3%, 143 miles, almost 2.5 hours, under 600 watt-hours per mile again, which is awesome. Really glad to see that efficiency holding up just a little bit. It did warm up quite a bit. It is 36 degrees, and locally 4 p.m. Sun is about to set on this winter solstice. So we're going to sit back and relax. Not too long here. Our next drive is only about an hour. We were getting some pretty wild fluctuations there at that charger. I swapped stalls here, and it looks like we're doing a little better. 172 so far. We'll see if it holds up. That's not good. That was quick. Really quick. We were at 45%. That's enough to make it 53 miles to Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah, all these plugs have a little crack in them. Interesting. Already we arrived with 15%. That stretch was 53 miles. It's a short one, 46 minutes, and a higher consumption of 646. So far in our trip, we're just shy of 700 miles, just over 400 kilowatt hours, and an average of 621 watt-hours per mile. We've only got one stop left in this trip, and that is Grand Island, Nebraska. Luckily, we've been on V3s all day. Grand Island will be our first and only V2 of the day. Quick check of the weather. It did warm up just a little bit, 36 degrees, a side wind from the south at 6 miles an hour, and no rain. It did get nice and sunny once again. All these cranes. That's wild. All right, and on we go. 62% departure and an estimated 11% arrival. Let's unplug. This is our last supercharging stop of this trip. 15% arrival. That was 87 miles, an hour and 13 minutes, just over 600 watt-hours per mile. Not too shabby. Our last stretch here is 100 miles, and this is, we are done with the interstate. We only have state highways and country roads left to go. So it says 2.5 hours. I don't think it's going to take 2.5 hours. It's usually an hour and a half to 2 hours for this last 100 miles. A lot of these are speed limits of 60, 70 miles an hour. So we're going to sit tight at this V2. It says 40 minutes. I don't think it's going to take that long either. But either way, as long as we're not splitting power, which it looks like we might be. Whew, okay, never mind. We should be good to go. And just like that, we've come to almost the end of our trip. 62% departure here, aiming for a 12% arrival in Downs, Kansas. About 100 miles to go. This ETA says 2 hours and 1 minute. We think it's going to be closer to 1 hour 45. So let's unplug. Okay, just like that, we are at the farm. Let's do a recap of this trip really quick. 99 miles in the last leg there, 547 watt hours per mile. We probably did 65, 60, maybe most of the way. Trip total, 878 miles, 537 kilowatt hours, and an average efficiency of 612 watt hours per mile. Not too bad. We did arrive with 14%, but there is a 220 plug that I'm going to get hooked into here at the shop, here on the farm, and it'll charge overnight. Hey, get out of there. Nice, pulling almost a full 240 volts. Might knock that just a little further. Nice. We've got juice on the farm. Stay tuned for a big trip recap here coming next. All right, here's a quick trip summary, including how much we spent on supercharging for the entire trip. 878 miles we drove this one day, 527 kilowatt hours consumed, which is half a megawatt hour. That's a lot. 612 watt hours per mile as measured by the truck was our average efficiency, as you can see here. You'll see in a second my data tracker tracked things a little differently, but we had 7 charging stops totaling $174. That's really expensive. That is almost the cost of gas. If you were to get like roughly 20 gallons per, or 20 miles per gallon, I haven't driven an ice car in forever. If you drove 20 miles per gallon, if your car drove 20 miles per gallon, you'd spend roughly the same amount on supercharging. That hurts a lot. That really does hurt. 13 hours and 38 minutes of driving time and 3 hours and 9 minutes of supercharging. That's 4-to-1 driving to charging ratio. I wish that was less, but again, this was kind of a cold weather test with the roof rack. Not winter tires quite yet. This was still the all-terrains, but if you threw on the all-seasons, if you threw on those core tires, you'd probably get a little better efficiency. I wanted to take you over to my data tracker. This is Tesla, the data tracking app. So the truck measured 612 watt hours per mile as an average efficiency, but as you can see here, Tesla calls it 646. So that's roughly 5% difference in tracking versus what the truck says. That being said, you can also see here that the miles are the same and the kilowatt hours are roughly the same throughout this whole trip. What I wanted to show you here was the speed efficiency and the temperature efficiency. So keep in mind, Tesla was tracking roughly 5% less efficient driving. So 55 to 60 miles an hour, we were doing 579 watt hours per mile over about 100 miles. From the 60 to 65 range, we also did 100 miles at 579 watt hours per mile. Those are the same for some reason. But then we get up to the 65 to 70 miles an hour. We did almost 500 miles between 65 and 70 miles an hour and burned 639 watt hours per mile. So that's getting up there. Even at 65 miles an hour, that is getting up there. And finally, 70 to 75. I think we did a little more above 75 for a bit, but not enough data to track it on here. 70 to 75 miles an hour was 680 watt hours per mile, and we did almost 300 miles there. So the difference between driving 60 miles an hour and 75 miles an hour is, what is that? Just over 10% hit to efficiency. And then here's the temperature. 15 to 20 degrees, we drove almost 200 miles below 20 degrees. 685 watt hours per mile burned at that lowest temperature. And you'll see we get more efficient as it warms up. 25 to 30 degrees, we drove 305 miles, 644 watt hours per mile. So the difference between 15 and 30 degrees is 5-ish%. Okay. 30 to 35, we drove again 300 miles, 619 watt hours per mile. That's again another, that's a couple percent better yet over top of the 25 range. And then we did just 50 miles or so around 40 degrees, and that was 685 watt hours per mile. So that's actually worse. That's actually the same as the 15 to 20 degree range. I'm guessing all of this driving happened at the very end when we were driving faster on the highway on I-80 going 80 miles an hour. But that's really interesting. Oh, one last thing I wanted to show you was the charge curve. The charge curve was real interesting. This right here is an example of the Cybertruck charge curve on a V3 supercharger. Tesla is rolling out the V4s really quickly that can charge up to 325 kilowatts. But peaking at 256 kilowatts, you can see this massive plateau across the top there. Like, there's a lot more room here to grow once you're on V4. So if you're road tripping the Cybertruck, try to make sure that you're hitting those V4s if they're convenient along your route. Don't go too far out of your way for them, because at the end of the day, you're still spending more time not driving. But there's a lot more room for improvement. I'm excited to see how Tesla builds out their I-80 throughway, if that's what you call it, because I drive that all the time between Michigan and Kansas. I'll probably be making more of these videos, so stay tuned for the next one. Let me know if you have any questions about this trip or any future trips, or if you want to see something different, a piece of data, what have you. But leave your comment below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.